Finding problems? That's easy. They exist in every community. I'm Terry Springs, your host. We're looking deeper, and we are talking solutions, finding out how we all can make a difference. Now on Talking Solutions, Cidney Donahoo is with us, and we're going to talk about Parkinson's disease and the fact that we're just now coming up on the tail end of Parkinson's Awareness Month. Cidney, there was a fundraiser that just happened last night related to Davis Phinney. I used to live in Colorado, where bicycling and sports of that sort are a big deal. And the name Davis Phinney, I know who that is. It must be something that he's dealing with.
Exactly. For those who do not know Davis Phinney, he was a professional cyclist, mostly in the 80s. Very successful. He's actually won more stages of the Tour de France than any American cyclist. At age 40, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And, you know, as most people with Parkinson's do, they take a little bit of time to absorb what's going on. And he kind of looked around and saw what was happening within the Parkinson's community. And he decided that his voice would be best served helping people live well with Parkinson's. The Michael J. Fox Foundation, which is a fabulous foundation, at the time was really focused and still is really focused on research. They do other things, but he looked at it and he thought, you know what? Research is important, it's great, it's necessary, but in the meantime, people are waking up every morning with Parkinson's disease. How can I help people who are going to possibly live with this their whole life live well? And so that's what his foundation is based on, is living well with Parkinson's.
Managing it to your best ability.
Exactly.
I lost my father to Parkinson's about 2.5 years ago, and I'm sure, like many other neurological conditions, everyone's course in dealing with Parkinson's has got to be unique. It's got to be different. People know I've got MS. Everybody with MS also has their own fight against multiple sclerosis. With Parkinson's, I've got to believe it's the same sort of thing.
It pretty much is. There's a saying, if you've seen one person with Parkinson's, you've seen one person with Parkinson's.
I agree.
Everybody's course, how it progresses, how it manifests itself, it is very unique, which is a challenge for both people living with Parkinson's and also the doctors and anyone who's dealing with it, because it is so different. I call it a moving target. You know, I get it figured out and then it moves. So you're constantly trying to do what you can, and then it changes a little and you have to adjust. So yeah, it is pretty much unique to everybody, and everybody deals with it in different ways.
Parkinson's has been in the news quite a lot. We'll hear about a celebrity who is being affected or who has passed. Robin Williams had been gone quite a while before the story from his wife came out that he also was dealing with Parkinson's. We all know about Michael J. Fox. That has been going on for decades. He had to be what we would consider early onset Parkinson's disease.
Yes, very much so. I think Michael J. Fox was diagnosed when he was 29. Early onset, you know, there's different parameters. I read this morning under 50. I've heard under 40. There's another term, and I think it's juvenile, or maybe it's not juvenile, but under 30 is really kind of rare. But I do know that there are a lot of people, and there's several here around town that have been diagnosed, and they're in their 30s, and I know people in their 40s and 50s. So I was diagnosed when I was 47, but that took about 4 years to get diagnosed. So I really started having symptoms when I was about 43.
They just didn't know.
Well, no, and it's hard to diagnose, especially with a young person. They're trying to basically rule out a lot of things, and that was what took 4 years, is they're trying to rule out all kinds of different things before they diagnosed me with Parkinson's, because I was younger. So they're not really looking.
Reverse diagnosis is kind of what I consider that. And that's what they do with MS too. When you're going through the diagnosis stage, they're like, oh, let's check for this. Okay, that's not it. And they just keep narrowing it down.
Right.
Too bad we can't just have a definitive test for Parkinson's and be able to give you that extra time, because it would seem like the earlier you get the diagnosis, the better. Does that sound crazy?
No, it's not. And that's very true. And they are really working hard to find better ways to diagnose it earlier for that exact reason. Because when you can start getting treatment earlier, when you can start getting information earlier, you should be able to have a better course, and you'd be able to work on, you know, slowing the progression. So yes, that's very true.
Cidney Donahoo is in with us. We're talking about Parkinson's Disease Awareness Month. You know for a fact It's something that you deal with. We've had a couple of discussions here on Talking Solutions about Parkinson's. The physical therapy department at UNLV, Merrill Landers, who is the head of the program, he's been in with us before to talk about Parkinson's studies with UNLV. There's certainly an awareness here. I do believe also there's quite a bit of work going on with the Cleveland Clinic and the Lou Ruvo Center for Brain Health. So hopefully we're figuring out how to make your quality of life better.
It's interesting you brought up UNLV. That's why I'm dressed the way I am right now, because I'm leaving here and going down to UNLV to do a study. It's a balance study for Parkinson's. It's with Dr. Poston, who is also at UNLV. He works very closely with Dr. Landers. It will be in Dr. Landers' lab. I just thought that was kind of funny. I'm like, I've got this on. I was going to apologize for dressing this way, but I got to go down there and be doing some work on the treadmill.
You look good, and you're wearing Rebel Red.
You're right.
When they finally give you that diagnosis, where do they go from there? Is there anything they can do? I suppose they have medications that they want to get you on.
Yeah, and the best thing to do is to go see a movement disorder specialist. That's the best thing to do if you can. Not everybody has access to that because they have that extra training. So they'll be able to help you manage it, the little intricacies of medication. But the main thing to do, and what the Finney Foundation really pushes, is to get out and move. Exercise has really been the only thing that has been proven to help slow down the progression of Parkinson's. So the Finney Foundation, and I get on my soapbox and say, wherever you are, you've got to get up and move. I have friends who have Parkinson's who do marathons, Spartan races. I have a friend actually today, he's from Chicago, and he is doing American Ninja Warrior. I actually have two friends doing that. So unbelievable people doing incredible things. But there's also people that walking around the block is the best that they can do. And that's great. Wherever you're at, that's where you start, and you just kind of go from there.
I think, Cidney, one of the things that we're finding out, too, through the studies that UNLV Physical Therapy is involved with regarding Parkinson's disease is, just like you say, movement is so critical. And let me give this across the board to anyone who's listening. Movement, whether you're dealing with a medical issue or not, is critical in your ability to age well.
Exactly. That is so true. I put it out there, if you have Parkinson's, you have to move. Really, if you're alive, you have to move.
Yes. Just months ago, they've said if you sit at your desk all day and work, it's as bad as smoking.
Right.
Because you need to move.
Right.
And everybody knows around here that you mentioned soapbox. I got my own soapbox. Yeah. And it has to do with people who are sitting in their chairs all day, including myself, and the need to do things like sit and stands. It's just in a chair, up, help strengthen your core, back down gently, up again, down. Sit and stands, anything, move, just get up and do something.
Yes, absolutely. I'm about 10 years into this disease, and I certainly have progressed. I am not the same person I was 10 years ago, but I really am doing okay, and I attribute that to moving. Because when I got diagnosed, I still had a couple kids at home, and I was working full time. You know, we were raising teenagers. I had a busy life. I wasn't exercising regularly. I was moving because I had to, but I wasn't exercising regularly. So once I got diagnosed and got the information that I needed to move, I started exercising very regularly. And I've been doing that 7 years now. And I wholeheartedly believe that it has helped me slow down the progression, but also I've really tried to focus on my health overall, because I believe that if I am healthy outside of my Parkinson's in all other areas, that will help me be able to manage my Parkinson's a lot better.
I agree completely. It's that element that so many people just ignore, that don't get. I came from a very sedate family. They were more academic than motivated by sports. But the fact is, nobody gets a free pass on this.
No, they
don't. The movement is so critical, and I just can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Very critical.
Cidney Donahoo is with us. We're talking about Parkinson's Disease Awareness Month going on right now. Cidney, you said you've been diagnosed?
About 7 years, but I had symptoms about 3.5, 4 years before I was diagnosed. So it's about 10 years since I've been dealing with the symptoms, 7 years since I was diagnosed.
And Parkinson's can be, not in every case, but certainly can be a horrendous disease.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I saw my dad. It's heartbreaking, but there are things to help slow the progression. And as we mentioned earlier, everyone who deals with Parkinson's has their own set of circumstances. Nobody has it the same as somebody else. Like you said, if you know one person with Parkinson's, you know one person with Parkinson's.
Exactly.
A lot of chronic chronic disease conditions work that way.
Right.
I understand. With MS, same thing.
Right.
With Parkinson's, every time we hear about someone being diagnosed, I know one of the ones that I keep hoping for the best for is Linda Ronstadt, the singer.
Right.
I know that Parkinson's, she says, has taken away her ability to sing.
Right.
And basically, she cut off that very important part of her life because Parkinson's can affect you in so many areas.
Yeah, that is one of the things that can happen. Not to everybody, but like with Linda Ronstadt, it can affect your voice. So it's really kind of difficult in a situation like that. That's been her life. And I think the best thing for somebody in that position to do is to try and take it in another direction. How can I still express myself musically, but maybe not vocally?
Oh, yeah, that would work.
Yeah, and again, back to Davis Finney, that's pretty much what he did. I mean, he was a professional cyclist. Now he's slow. I mean, if you watch him, he does move slow. He still rides his bike, but clearly he doesn't ride his bike or race his bike. So he had to take that love of cycling and of being active and put it in a different area. So, anybody who has that situation, there's people with Parkinson's who are artists, and it may affect them because it does affect small motor skills. Mm-hmm. How can you take what you love and put it somewhere else?
It's a good point. My father, the reason why they started wondering what was wrong with him is he always had very strong, beautiful handwriting.
Yeah.
And suddenly he had this difficulty.
Right.
And as he would write, it would trail off and become very small. And I just thought he needed to get a bigger pen or something.
Right.
But I wasn't there in Kansas where it was happening. I was far away.
Right.
So I wasn't monitoring it on a day-to-day basis, but I know that troubled him greatly because he always had just this beautiful penmanship, and that was his first symptom. When you talk about Davis Finney, the former all-star cyclist, not cycling, moving slowly, I understand that. And I don't know from your perspective, Cidney, but I think part of the slow movement is just to make sure that you don't take that fall that can be so devastating.
That's part of it. I mean, I am very careful, but it's also literally you slow down. Your body just does not move as fast. When I'm in what's called off stage, which means my medication hasn't kicked in yet or it's worn off, it's kind of like somebody has poured cement down my throat and I'm trying to move while I'm full of cement. It's just hard to move and it just slows you down. So yes, that's part of it. And when I'm in off mode, I'm super careful how I move. For that reason, I don't want to fall. I don't have a lot of gait problems, but people who have gait problems, that is a big issue where they fall a lot. And I do have friends who that is a real issue for them, and they have to be very careful.
It's scary.
Yeah.
It's very frightening, and it can become your overwhelming fear that you want to do anything you can to prevent that fall because it can have a lasting impact.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Cidney Donahoo is visiting us today on Talking Solutions. We are discussing Parkinson's disease. It is Awareness Month in April, so we're just coming up on the tail end of it. Cidney, you've been diagnosed for a number of years. When they finally weeded out all the other things, they said, no, it's not that, not that, not that. Ruled out all these other possibilities, and we now say that you are diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Did you go through the same denial, which is so normal for people who find out that they have something that there's really no answer for?
Yeah, I think how it progressed with me was a little bit different because I did have that almost 4 years before I was actually formally diagnosed. After about 3 years, and my neurologist started saying, well, maybe it's Parkinsonism, but I don't think it's Parkinson's disease, and I don't think it's going to progress like Parkinson's disease, but I knew I was progressing. I could tell. So I pretty much took upon myself to get online, and I just started reading and reading and reading. There was a period of time where I did go through some denial because my family kept asking me, what's going on, what's going on? And I finally had to say, you know what, I just don't want to talk about it. I just really didn't want to talk about it. And I did go through the period of time where I ignored it, but then I thought, I just want to know what this is. I want to know what it is so I can do something about it. And again, I got online and I did a lot of research, and that's when I found the study that was being done. It was actually being done here at the Cleveland Clinic at the Lou Ruvo Center, and it was an exercise study that had to do with what's called forced exercise. It had started on tandem bikes. It was Dr. Jay Albers in Iowa on the RAGBRAI bike ride. He had a person with Parkinson's on the back of the tandem bike, and they noticed that her symptoms seemed to be reduced when she was riding on the back of this bike. So long story, they started a study in Cleveland at the Cleveland Clinic, and right pretty much at the same time I got diagnosed, they brought the study here to Las Vegas. So I actually, because I didn't at that time have a diagnosis, I paid cash and went to the Cleveland Clinic. They didn't take my insurance, but I thought, I got to figure this out. So I went down to the Cleveland Clinic. I got diagnosed that day. The next day I called them and I said, I want to do this bike study. So I was involved in the bike study, and that's how I started cycling. That's how I found out about the Davis Finney Foundation. That's how my husband started cycling, and we've been riding our bikes ever since then.
And that's one of the activities that involve a lot of movement that help you manage having Parkinson's.
Right.
It had to have slowed your progression. And as we mentioned, everyone with Parkinson's has a different course of the disease, but you certainly have moderated yours by being active. And your timing, getting involved with the bike study with the Cleveland Clinic, excellent. From your perspective, to be able to do that from the start.
Yeah, and you know what? It is really an interesting perspective. A lot of people have done that study who have been diagnosed and have had it for a while. And so they've seen the improvements where they've been able to reduce their medication. For me, I was right in the beginning. So it wasn't as dramatic as far as I'm here and now I'm here, because I hadn't progressed that far at the time. But it got me immediately on a course where I was managing the disease.
You couldn't take a better proactive kind of move than to find out that you've got Parkinson and immediately launch into movement and activity that helps you moderate it.
Yeah, I feel really lucky that I found that so early on.
You know, it's funny, I've told people that before about how getting a diagnosis that there's no cure, that you can actually feel lucky after getting it.
Yeah.
It's funny, I don't think they understand that, but it's truly, you're not going to waste your life.
No.
You're not going to hold off on things. I see a very positive attitude on your part. Okay, all right, it's what I'm dealing with, but knowledge is power. You learn what you can, you do what you can, and you come out on the winning end.
Right. I have a friend, Carl Ames from Phoenix. I always tell him I want to steal his quote, and I say it all the time. He says, I don't wish Parkinson's on anybody, but I wish everybody could experience the people I've met and the experiences I've had with Parkinson's. And I really feel that way. Just the people that I've become involved with here in town and nationally, phenomenal people, just phenomenal people, experiences that we have. We still go to Iowa every year. This will be our 7th year that we've gone to Iowa and done RAGBRAI, which is a 7-day bike ride across Iowa, and we do it with a group called Pedaling for Parkinson's. We go to Colorado every year and do Ride the Rockies with Davis Finney Foundation. I don't actually do that. My husband rides. I tell people it's above my pay grade. But I go and I help out. I support the team, and I go out on the course and I make them peanut butter sandwiches for when they come by and they're hungry, and we love it. So yeah, there's some experiences I've had that we wouldn't have had otherwise, and people that we've met. So yeah, it can be a blessing. You just have to find it. Sometimes it's hard to find.
Some days it's hard to think it's a blessing.
Yes, absolutely.
But overall, yeah, all the positive things that you've mentioned that have to do with your course of dealing with Parkinson's disease.
Well, and another thing that I believe is a real blessing is that I really live for today. It really changed my perspective of life so that, people say, are you scared for the future? I'm like, I don't think about it. I don't project forward. I don't see somebody who's more advanced and say, oh my goodness, that's going to be me. I don't. I know I have to plan for the future. I know I have to be aware of the possibilities, but I really focus on today, and I just don't worry about the future.
Cidney Donahoo is in talking with us about Parkinson's disease. Cidney, I can honestly say that I've seen the dark side of Parkinson's with my father, but I also believe that the proactive things that you're doing and ongoing, the movement and all of the other steps that you're taking to manage it, there's no guarantee that you're going to end up experiencing any of those darker stages that we're talking about. Research is going on. You're active. You're involved in things. You're taking it one day at a time, which I love. I think we discussed on the phone the other day that new line that I love, the slogan for Jose Cuervo, tomorrow is overrated.
Right.
I like that way of thinking. As part of Talking Solutions, we always ask, what can we do to help you?
Well, just kind of be aware I think this goes along with anybody, whether they have Parkinson's or any other condition. Be aware that you don't always know what's going on with somebody. So if something looks a little odd, help that person out. Or one of the challenges for me is that people don't know I have Parkinson's. They can't see it. But
I could not see it when you came in our lobby today.
Yeah. And part of that is because my medication is on right now. And part of it is because a lot of my symptoms are not outward symptoms. It's different for everybody. Some people, it's very apparent. For me, it's like people are like, well, you don't look like you have Parkinson's. And I'm like, well, no, I don't. But trust me, I feel like I have Parkinson's, especially when my medication's worn off. So, just kind of being aware that you don't always know what's going on. Give people kind of a break, the benefit of the doubt, and just kind of help them be aware. And if you know anybody who you think has Parkinson's, get them to a neurologist, and if you can, to a movement disorder specialist. There's actually 2 movement disorder specialists in town. There's a Cleveland Clinic, and there's Dr. Eric Farbman down at UMC. And there's a lot of other good neurologists in town. But those are the 2 that deal specifically with Parkinson's and other movement disorders. And that's a good place to start. And then I do not suggest that people get online like I did, because it can be overwhelming to get online and just start reading. It can make you crazy because there's so much information, and a lot of it is not very pleasant.
A lot of it is not exactly accurate.
True, a lot of it's not accurate. The Davis Finney Foundation has what's called the Every Victory Counts manual, and I have given out so many of these. It's kind of a guidebook. It helps give you a real comprehensive direction on, okay, you have Parkinson's now. How can you manage this? Exercise, nutrition, socially, just every aspect of your life. How can you manage this? I've given a ton of those out. They're actually free, and that's because, like you were saying, the fundraisers like we're doing, they've been able to produce that manual for free. And so literally all you have to do is go onto the website and order it, and you'll get it within a couple weeks, which is fabulous.
I will make sure I include all the information on our Talking Solutions Facebook page, along with a podcast of our discussion today.
Awesome.
Cidney Donahoo is visiting us today. We're talking about Parkinson's disease. It is Parkinson's Disease Awareness Month in April. Cidney, is there anything else that you want to say?
I think what I would say is don't give up hope. I've met so many people with Parkinson's, and the story is similar with just about everybody. There's a period of denial. I do not know anybody who hasn't had a period of denial, a period of fear. And once you get past that, you can really find a lot of hope. There is so much out there that you can do to help manage the disease. You do not have to lose hope. Gain knowledge, stay active both physically and emotionally. Keep active with people. Don't shut yourself in. I think a lot of the reasons people try and shut themselves in is because they get embarrassed and they aren't sure what to do. You've got to get past that. You just have to say, okay, this is what it is. I'm going to go out. I need to stay active physically. I need to stay engaged socially. All those things are so important for anybody. But when you have Parkinson's, it makes it a little bit more challenging.
I always say that when we raise awareness, we promote understanding and empathy, and we're all nicer to each other.
Right.
Chances are you may have someone in your circle or someone in your family or someone in your future who deals with Parkinson's disease. We don't have a cure yet. I'm sure they're working on that.
They're working hard on that.
But there are drugs. There are treatments. There are things that you can do to make your life better.
Exactly. Go out there and find them. Go out there and find a person that can support you, a group that can support you, get information. Like you say, knowledge is huge. If you don't have the knowledge, you're not going to know where you can go to help, but knowledge is huge.
Cidney Donahoo, in talking with us today about Parkinson's disease, thank you so much for the information.
All right.